Have you ever wondered why some days you wake up just absolutely full of energy, ready to take on the world, and then other days you feel like you're literally dragging yourself through mud? Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're exploring the fascinating biological blueprint of sleep and wakefulness. We're going to unpack the hard science behind your daily rhythms, pulling right from the latest research so you can figure out how to feel remarkably alert during the day and rest deeply at night.
But before we get into the nitty-gritty science, we have to ask a pretty fundamental question. Why are you always so tired? A lot of us have been conditioned to view sleep as just a pause button, right? A forced break from our busy lives. But it's really not just a break. Sleep is this incredibly active, critical period that physically resets your focus, your alertness, and even your emotional stability. The quality of your wakeful state during the day is directly determined by the quality of your sleep, and incredibly, vice versa. Okay, so here's our roadmap for the explainer today. We're looking at sleep, hunger, and caffeine, waking up with sunlight, daytime habits and rhythms, sunset and avoiding light, and finally, tools for falling asleep. All right, let's dive into Section 1, Sleep, Hunger, and Caffeine.
Let's start with the invisible biological force that really drives your daily energy levels, and that's sleep hunger. This is the core reason you feel exhausted at the end of the day. Throughout the day, a molecule called adenosine steadily builds up in your body and brain. Think of adenosine like a biological hourglass. The moment you wake up, the sand starts falling. The longer you're awake, the more adenosine accumulates, creating this really powerful sleep hunger. And when those levels get high, your brain gets an overwhelming urge to just sleep. That hourglass only resets, dropping your adenosine levels completely back down to baseline after you get a full, restorative night's rest.
So what about that morning cup of coffee? How does that fit in? Well, caffeine is actually incredibly clever. It acts as what scientists call a chemical mask, or an antagonist. When you drink it, caffeine rushes in and physically docks into your brain's adenosine receptors. It doesn't actually clear the adenosine away, it just temporarily blocks the signal. So your brain simply can't feel the sleepiness. This gives you a fantastic surge of energy and a bump in dopamine. But here's the catch. That adenosine, it's still building up in the background, just filling up that biological hourglass. So when that caffeine finally wears off, boom, you get hit with all that accumulated adenosine at once. Hello, dreaded 3 o'clock afternoon crash. Moving on to Section 2, waking up with sunlight. To really fix your sleep and manage that massive adenosine crash, we have to start at the very beginning of your day. When you wake up, your system generates a rising tide of the hormone cortisol to spark your alertness and actually get you out of bed. But to lock this healthy rhythm in, your master clock, which is this tiny, highly specialized region in your brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, sitting just above the roof of your mouth, needs a very specific environmental signal. This central clock relies on unique electrical signals from retinal ganglion cells in your eyes. And the fascinating part here is that these specific cells only activate properly when very specific wavelengths of light enter the eye.
And that brings us to a surprisingly simple yet scientifically profound morning protocol. Step 1, wake up. Step 2, go outside. Step 3, view natural sunlight for 2 to 10 minutes. Doing this outside without sunglasses is absolutely key. You need the optimal blue and yellow light wavelengths from the actual sun to physically hit your retina. If you're thinking about just, turning on the bright lights in your bathroom, it's not going to work. Artificial room lights simply aren't bright enough to trigger this biological mechanism effectively, especially in the morning when the sun's solar angle is low. The science behind this morning light protocol is honestly staggering. The specific melanopsin cells in your eyes responsible for detecting this morning light are incredibly powerful. Research reveals they're 1,000 to 10,000 times more effective at setting your internal circadian clock than simply waking up and exercising in a dark room. Think about that. It is that dramatic. Light is absolutely the primary time giver for your entire biology.
Let's look at Section 3, Daytime Habits and Rhythms. The absolutely crucial point to take away here is that your morning habits directly dictate your nighttime sleep. Everything is connected by this incredible biological timer that starts ticking the exact moment you view that morning sunlight. That sunlight exposure creates a healthy cortisol spike, and that specific spike sets an internal timer dictating that your pineal gland will release the sleepiness hormone melatonin exactly 12 to 14 hours later. It's a completely automatic rhythm. So if you delay your morning sunlight exposure, you delay your evening melatonin release, which makes it incredibly frustrating to fall asleep on time. Now, while light is the undisputed heavyweight champion of setting your biological clock, it's not the only tool you have. You can powerfully reinforce this rhythm through other daily habits. shifting your exercise routines and your food intake strictly to the daytime acts as a secondary anchor for your biology. These influences are incredibly helpful, especially for people who naturally feel like night owls. By strictly timing when you eat and sweat, you can literally coax your stubborn biology to shift, helping you become a true morning person with sustainable all-day energy.
That brings us to Section 4, Sunset and Avoiding Light.
As the day winds down, how you handle light becomes just as critical as how you handled it in the morning. Catching just 2 to 10 minutes of sunlight around sunset is a fantastic biological hack. Viewing the shifting wavelengths of light as the sun goes down firmly signals the end of the day to your central clock. But even more importantly, this late afternoon light exposure essentially acts as a protective shield. It fortifies your central clock, buffering your brain against the disruptive effects of all the artificial lights you're inevitably going to encounter later that night.
And trust me, you definitely want that protective shield. Prolonged wakefulness makes your retina highly sensitive as the night goes on. If you expose your eyes to bright light between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m., the biological consequences are pretty devastating. It doesn't just improperly shift and confuse your internal clock, it actively suppresses dopamine release. That late-night doom scrolling or watching TV in a bright room, it's quite literally diminishing your overall happiness and significantly impairing your memory and learning abilities for the entire next day.
There's also a really fascinating quirk of human biology here. The neurons in your eye that signal your master clock are mostly located in the bottom half of your retina. They're physically designed to look up and detect sunlight coming from overhead. So to hack this at night, you have to actively avoid overhead lights, especially bright fluorescence. When overhead light hits the bottom of your retina, your brain literally thinks the sun just came back up. Instead, switch to dim desk lamps or floor lights placed low in your physical environment. This simulates a safe evening environment, keeping your brain relaxed and ready for rest.
Finally, Section 5, Tools for Falling Asleep.
So, what if you followed all the light protocols, but you're still tossing and turning? Well, here's a hard truth about your autonomic nervous system. It is biologically much easier to force yourself to stay awake than it is to force yourself to fall asleep. To overcome this frustrating asymmetry, you have to use your body to control your mind. You can do this through non-sleep deep rest, or NSDR protocols. Techniques like meditation, yoga nidra, hypnosis, or simply focusing on exhale-emphasized breathing literally train your nervous system to dial down its sympathetic activation, smoothly paving the way for deep sleep. While behavioral tools like light viewing and NSDR are always going to be your best foundation, some supplements can help, though they do require extreme caution. Compounds like magnesium threonate, theanine, and epigenine are widely noted for aiding sleepiness. But biology is highly complex, and there's no free lunch here. For example, epigenine is a potent estrogen inhibitor, which is a major consideration for your overall hormone balance. And theanine can cause incredibly vivid dreams, which could actually be dangerous for folks prone to sleepwalking. Always verify safety on peer-reviewed resources like examine.com before adding anything new to your routine.
We've unpacked the biology of the adenosine hourglass, the sheer power of your master clock, and how light entirely dictates your 24-hour biological blueprint. So if you now know that simply viewing morning light and avoiding late-night overhead screens can radically transform your daytime energy and guarantee your nighttime rest, what's holding you back from stepping outside tomorrow morning to reset your biological clock?